We're standing in the glass gallery at the Cloisters, which is the branch of the Metropolitan Museum of Art dedicated to the art and architecture of the Middle Ages. One of the things that people think about when they think about the Cloisters is medieval religious life, things like monasteries. But one of the exciting things about being in this space is that you get a sense of the range of materials that were created for other aspects of medieval life, things that were used at the table, for instance. And that's one of the reasons that we have really focused on building out the collections more recently with objects that are connected to daily life in the Middle Ages. These wonderful ceramics to either side of me were acquired within the last 20 years to really provide people with an insight into the kinds of artistic production that were associated with another aspect of the Middle Ages. One of the objects in this space that I'm most excited about is the Kedleston Jug. This is a very, very rare survival of a medieval ceramic on a large scale. Much of this material would have been used and used up, and very few objects on this scale survive. This survives because it was a waster. It was an object that was placed into the kiln, and there was a firing accident, and there was a huge crack that emerged, so it didn't function as the vessel that it was intended to. But these large objects were probably used to store ale and things like cider. It was found on the property of the Kettlestone estate, and it was associated with a kiln on Burley Hill, which is a place where a lot of pottery of this kind was made. The fantastic thing about this object, besides its scale, is that it's probably associated with the Ferrer family. We know that because of the horseshoes that appear on the exterior, which was one of the insignias of the family. This was a Norman family that came over to England during the time of William the Conqueror, and they were given estates in England where they set themselves up. And this fantastic example of an ale jug was probably used by the family on the property of the estate. One of the reasons that we're interested in material like this at the Cloisters is because in the 1950s, the Cloisters acquired a whole group of objects of Spanish lusterware from the Hearst estate. But one of the missing traditions of a very important strain in medieval artistic production was ceramics produced on the continent and in England. And in this object, we have one of the monumental works produced during the Norman period in England to survive on an unprecedented scale. It's really unusual to have things like this come through the ages. The wonderful thing about this kind of pottery is that it has a wonderful immediacy and a directness. It's often filled with the traces of its manufacture. You can sense the lines of the potter's fingers as the piece turns on the wheel. You can sense the pressure that they've applied as they press the handle onto the object itself. So these objects have a wonderful directness and a kind of vivid connection to their makers that brings a lot of this material to life in a compelling way for our audiences. That's one of the reasons that we feel like ceramics as a major artistic tradition should be represented in the Cloisters in as broad a way as possible. One of the things that people think about when they come to the Cloisters is the ecclesiastical setting of the building. Much of the architecture comes from medieval monasteries, from the settings like churches, and the objects speak to those kinds of architectural spaces. Here in the glass gallery at the Cloisters, we have an opportunity to show a different aspect of medieval life. The gallery takes its name from a series of roundels in the windows that probably come from domestic contexts or town halls, so a very different setting than the ecclesiastical structures and spaces that people see upstairs. And one of the amazing things about the works of art in these galleries is that they provide a really direct connection to things like daily life in the Middle Ages. One can think about the great objects like aquamanils made out of things like bronze. And here you have objects made in ceramic, many of which mimic those higher art forms, but are produced for a very different kind of clientele. And these wonderful objects give a very direct sense of the connection to medieval daily life.